A single whisper in a ballroom can ruin a woman's life faster than the sharpest blade. When the glittering society of 1814 London turned its vicious fangs on Lady Beatrice, the notoriously cold Duke of Havenwood did the unthinkable. He didn't offer his sword. He offered his lips. You have to understand the absolute, unyielding viciousness of high society in Regency London. Beneath the glittering chandeliers of Almac's assembly rooms, beneath the scent of expensive French perfumes and the soft trills of Mozart, there lay a battlefield as brutal as any fought by Lord Wellington on the peninsula. In this world, a woman's reputation was her currency, her armor, and her life. To lose it was to be buried alive. It was May of 1814. The Prince Regent was in the throes of planning his grand jubilee, and the city was bursting with allied sovereigns, diplomats, and the highest echelon of the British aristocracy. At the center of this swirling vortex of wealth and power was Lady Beatrice Linfield, the only daughter of the Earl of Cornwall. Beatrice was not a fragile, fainting flower. She was sharply intelligent, fiercely loyal to her ailing father, and possessed a quiet, striking beauty that had already drawn the ire of the ton's more jealous matrons. But Beatrice had a fatal flaw. She believed the truth would always protect her. The rumor began, as these things often do, with a half-truth wrapped in a devastating lie. A maid at a lavish country house party in Oxfordshire claimed to have seen Lady Beatrice slipping out of the private bedchamber of Lord Reginald Harrington at 3 in the morning. Lord Harrington was a married man, a notorious rake, and an intimate friend of the Prince Regent himself. The truth? Beatrice had indeed been in that wing of the manor, desperately searching for her younger, foolish cousin, Lucy, who had planned to elope that very night with a penniless cavalry officer. Beatrice had intercepted Lucy, dragged her back to her room, and saved the family from ruin. But in doing so, Beatrice had been spotted in the darkened corridor. The shadows obscured her cousin, leaving Beatrice alone in the treacherous light of a single tallow candle. Within 48 hours, the whisper reached London. By the time Beatrice stepped out of her carriage at King Street to attend the Wednesday night assembly at Almack's, the whisper had become a roar. To make matters worse, the highest arbiters of social survival, the dreaded patronesses of Almack's, notably the formidable Lady Sarah Jersey and the ruthless Russian ambassadress, Princess Lieven had already heard the tale. When Beatrice walked into the grand ballroom, draped in a modest gown of pale blue silk, the music did not stop. But the people did. It started at the edges of the room, a subtle shifting of shoulders, fans snapping shut. The cut direct, the ultimate social weapon where people look right through you as if you do not exist. As Beatrice walked toward the center of the room, couples physically stepped aside, parting like the Red Sea, leaving her stranded on the polished wooden floor. Her chaperone, her elderly aunt Agatha, began to hyperventilate. The whispers were no longer hidden. I hear she was in his bed for hours, disgraceful. Her poor father, the Earl, will surely die of the shame. Standing by the grand pillars, nursing a glass of watered lemonade, was William St. John, the Duke of Havenwood. William was 32, a veteran of the Peninsular War, and a man carved from ice and iron. He had inherited the dukedom after his older brother's tragic death at the Battle of Vittoria. William despised London society. He despised the gossip, the pretense, and the cruelty. But he possessed a tragic secret of his own. 10 years prior, his younger sister, Lady Margaret, had been the victim of a similarly vicious rumor orchestrated by jealous rivals. Unable to bear the shame and the sudden abandonment of her fiancé, Margaret had walked into the lake at the family's country estate and drowned herself. When William looked across the floor of Almack's and saw Lady Beatrice standing there, trembling but keeping her chin defiantly raised, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, he did not see a scandalous woman. He saw his sister. He saw the wolves circling. And a cold, terrifying fury gripped his heart. He knew Beatrice only in passing. He knew she was reputed to be a bluestocking, preferring the library to the ballroom. He knew her father was deeply in debt and suffered from a weak heart. This scandal wouldn't just exile Beatrice to the countryside, it would kill her father and plunge her into absolute destitution. Lady Fiona Danvers, a malicious widow who had long harbored a bitter grudge against Beatrice's family, stepped forward from the crowd. Fiona's voice was deliberately loud, designed to carry over the violins. "My dear Lady Beatrice," Fiona purred, her eyes flashing with wicked delight. "We did not expect to see you in polite society tonight, or ever again, for that matter. Tell me, how is Lord Harrington's lovely wife faring? Have you sent her your apologies, or merely your undergarments?" A collective gasp echoed through the ballroom. It was the killing blow. Beatrice turned pale, her breathing shallow. She opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself, but the sheer weight of the room's hatred crushed the air from her lungs. She was ruined. In 5 seconds, her life was entirely over, until the Duke of Havenwood set down his glass. The sharp clink of the Duke's crystal glass hitting the marble table cut through the rising murmur of the crowd like a gunshot. William St. John, Duke of Havenwood, was a man who commanded absolute authority. He was tall, broad-shouldered from years in the cavalry, with dark, unyielding eyes that had stared down French artillery without blinking. When he moved, the crowd instinctively shrank back. He strode across the ballroom floor. His face was an unreadable mask of aristocratic indifference, but the tempo of his boots on the floorboards sounded like a military drumbeat. He did not look at Lady Fiona. He did not look at the patronesses. He fixed his gaze entirely on Lady Beatrice. Beatrice watched him approach, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She barely knew the Duke. They had shared exactly one dance 3 weeks ago, during which they had debated the agricultural reforms of Thomas Coke. Why was he approaching her? Was he coming to deliver the final condemnation on behalf of the peers of the realm? William stopped mere inches from her. He was so close, she could smell the clean scent of sandalwood, starch, and the faint, metallic tang of cold night air that always seemed to cling to him. "Your Grace," Beatrice whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, I am unwell. I must leave." "You will not run, Beatrice," William said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone meant only for her ears. "If you run now, you will run for the rest of your life." He turned his head slowly, fixing Lady Fiona Danvers with a stare so lethally cold that the widow physically took a step backward. "Lady Fiona," the Duke's voice boomed, rich and resonant, echoing up to the painted ceiling of Almack's. "You speak with remarkable audacity about matters of which you know absolutely nothing. It is a dangerous habit." Fiona bristled, clutching her fan. "Your Grace, the entire town knows of her midnight tryst. It is no secret." "The entire town," William countered, his voice dripping with aristocratic disdain, "is comprised of fools who trade in shadows because they cannot bear the light. Lady Beatrice was not with Lord Harrington in Oxfordshire." A murmur ripped through the crowd. Princess Leven leaned forward in her chair, her eyes narrowing. "And how would you know this, Your Grace?" she challenged. William turned his attention back to Beatrice. He looked down into her terrified, wide eyes. "Forgive me," he thought, "but it is the only way." "I know," William declared, raising his voice so every soul in the room could hear, "'cause Lady Beatrice was with me." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum, devoid of breath or movement. Beatrice stared at him, her lips parted in sheer shock. With him? The lie was so monumental, so impossibly scandalous yet strangely protective that her mind couldn't process it. "We have been secretly betrothed since last autumn." William lied, effortlessly, his tone utterly unshakable. "She was in the corridor at Oxfordshire because we were finalizing the details of the settlements in private. Any insult directed at Lady Beatrice Linfield is an insult directed at the future Duchess of Havenwood, and I assure you all, He paused, his dark eyes sweeping the room, lingering on the men who had just turned their backs on her. I do not take insults lightly. Before the crowd could process the magnitude of his claim, before Beatrice could utter a single word of protest or confusion, William did the unthinkable. In the middle of Almack's, under the strict puritanical gaze of the patronesses, where even a lingering touch of a gloved hand was considered scandalous, the Duke of Havenwood reached out, laced his fingers through the hair at the nape of Beatrice's neck, and pulled her to him. He kissed her. It was not a chaste, performative peck on the cheek. It was a breathtaking, possessive, desperate kiss that shattered the rules of polite society. Beatrice gasped against his mouth, her hands instinctively coming up to grip the lapels of his black evening coat. For a singular, suspended moment, the terror of the room faded. She felt the searing heat of his skin, the firm, undeniable strength of his grip anchoring her to the earth. He kissed her to sell the lie. He kissed her to silence a rumor with a spectacle so blinding it would overwrite everything else. He kissed her because, in that moment, he needed the wolves to see that this woman belonged to a lion. When he finally pulled away, Beatrice was flushed, breathless, and visibly trembling. The room was in pandemonium. Women were hiding their faces behind their fans. Men were whispering furiously, but the malicious sneers were gone, replaced by shock and awe. The Duke had claimed her. She was untouchable. William gently tucked her hand into the crook of his arm. "Come," he murmured. "We are leaving." He escorted her and a dumbfounded Aunt Agatha through the parting sea of aristocrats, down the grand staircase, and out into the cool, damp London night. The Duke's carriage, a magnificent black lacquered coach bearing the Havenwood crest, was waiting. He handed the ladies inside and climbed in after them, rapping his cane on the roof. The carriage lurched forward, the iron-shod wheels clattering over the cobblestones, leaving Almack's and the shattered rumor behind. Inside the carriage, the only light came from the passing street lamps, casting fleeting, golden shadows across William's face. The fierce, protective warmth he had shown in the ballroom vanished instantly. He sat back against the velvet squabs, his posture rigid, his expression returning to a mask of absolute, chilling ice. Beatrice, her heart still racing from the kiss and the sheer adrenaline of the rescue, leaned forward. "Your Grace, I do not have the words. You saved my life tonight." "You saved my father's life. I know not why you told such a lie, but I am entirely in your debt." William pulled a stark, white linen handkerchief from his pocket and slowly, deliberately, wiped his mouth. The gesture was so cold, so dismissive, that Beatrice felt a physical sting. "Do not mistake my actions for affection, Lady Beatrice," William said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I did what I did because I despise the mob, and because I know what their cruelty can do to a family." "I am innocent," Beatrice pleaded, needing him to believe her. "I was never with Harrington." "I know you were not with Harrington," William replied smoothly, reaching into the inner pocket of his coat. He withdrew a folded piece of parchment, cracked along the edges, sealed with a familiar dark green wax. "Because Harrington is a fool." But someone orchestrated this rumor with absolute precision. And they had help. He tossed the letter onto Beatrice's lap. She looked down, her blood running cold. It was the Linfield family crest pressed into the wax. "I found this beneath the floorboards, in the very corridor you were seen in, Beatrice," the Duke said, his eyes narrowing in the darkness. "It is addressed to the French consulate, detailing naval ship movements out of Portsmouth. It bears your seal. I stepped in tonight because I will not see a woman bullied to death by society gossips." He leaned forward, the shadows masking half his face. "But understand this," William whispered dangerously. "We are now bound by my declaration. We will marry. We will play the devoted couple. But if I discover that you are playing a treasonous game against the crown Beatrice. I will not need the society matrons to ruin you. I will destroy you myself. The heavy velvet curtains of the Havenwood carriage seemed to swallow the silence that followed the Duke's terrifying accusation. Beatrice stared at the letter, resting on the silk fabric of her gown. The green wax bore the unmistakable crest of the Earl of Cornwall, a rampant lion gripping a sword. Her family's honor, physically stamped onto a document containing high treason. I did not write this, Beatrice breathed, her voice trembling, not from fear of the Duke, but from the sudden, horrifying realization of what this meant. My father is a patriot. He lost his brother to the French at Trafalgar. He would sooner burn his own house to the ground than betray the crown. William studied her in the gloom. His eyes were cold, assessing her every micro-expression. The War Office intercepted 3 such letters bound for Paris in the last month. Lord Castlereagh himself brought this to my attention. The intelligence is highly accurate. Someone with intimate access to Parliament's naval committees is passing information. Your father, despite his illness, still receives the daily dispatch boxes. Beatrice's mind raced. The dispatch boxes. They sat in her father's study, guarded only by an aging butler and a lock to which 3 people held keys: her father, herself, and... A sickening wave of nausea washed over her. The signet ring, she whispered, her eyes widening. My father's secondary signet ring, the one he kept on his writing desk. It went missing nearly 2 months ago. We assumed one of the scullery maids had stolen it to pawn, but they hadn't. William leaned forward, the icy detachment in his demeanor fracturing just a fraction. Who took it, Beatrice? My cousin, she said, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Lucy, the girl I was chasing through the corridors of Oxfordshire, the man she was trying to elope with. He is not a penniless cavalry officer, is he? Lieutenant Thomas Ashford, William stated grimly. Or so he calls himself. We suspect his real name is Henri Delacroix, a Bonapartist agent. We knew he was courting someone on the fringes of the aristocracy to gain access to sensitive materials, but we did not know who. Until I found this letter, dropped near Harrington's chambers. Beatrice covered her face with her gloved hands. It all made a twisted, devastating kind of sense. Lucy was young, incredibly naive, and desperately romantic. Ashford must have wooed her, convincing her to stamp a few routine letters to aid his military promotion, manipulating the foolish girl into committing high treason. The rumor of Beatrice and Lord Harrington hadn't just been society gossip. It had been a deliberate smokescreen. Ashford had paid that maid to start the rumor, knowing it would destroy Beatrice, force the Linfield family to flee to the country in disgrace, and allow him to isolate Lucy entirely. He wanted me ruined, Beatrice said, lowering her hands. The terror in her eyes had vanished, replaced by a burning, resolute fire. He wanted me out of the way so he could take Lucy and my father's access without my interference. William St. John, a man who had commanded battalions and broken enemy lines, felt a sudden, profound shift in his chest. He had expected her to weep, to beg for mercy, or to faint. Instead, he saw a warrior calculating her next strike. We are going to trap him, Your Grace, Beatrice said, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. But to do so, London must believe your lie. They must believe I am the future Duchess of Havenwood. They must believe I am entirely distracted by my sudden good fortune. A slow, dangerous smile curved the corner of the Duke's mouth. It was a terrifying expression. You are suggesting we continue the charade, Lady Beatrice? I am suggesting we play it to the hilt, she countered. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock, you will take me riding in your open phaeton through Hyde Park. You will look at me as if I hung the very moon and stars in the sky. And while the ton is busy whispering about our romance, I will search Lucy's chambers for Ashford's next drop location. William stared at the woman sitting across from him. the blue-stocking daughter of a ruined earl. She was magnificent. "Very well, Beatrice," he murmured softly. "Let us give society a romance they will never forget." The following 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception. London society, so eager to tear Beatrice to shreds, completely reversed its course when faced with the absolute authority of the Duke of Havenwood. To cross Beatrice was now to cross a man who owned half of Yorkshire and possessed the ear of the Prince Regent. Every afternoon, William's magnificent, matched greys pulled his carriage into Rotten Row. He would hand Beatrice down, his large, gloved hand lingering on her waist, just a second longer than propriety dictated. He bought her hothouse roses. He stood behind her chair at the theater, bending to whisper in her ear, making her laugh. The dangerous part was how effortless it became. One evening, standing on the balcony of Lady Cowper's townhouse, away from the prying eyes of the ballroom, William gently brushed a stray curl from Beatrice's cheek. His fingers traced the line of her jaw. "You are a remarkably convincing actress, Beatrice," he murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips. The memory of that desperate kiss at Almack's had haunted him for a fortnight. Beatrice looked up into his dark eyes, her breath hitching. The boundaries between their lie and the truth were blurring. She felt the heavy, protective warmth radiating from him, the absolute safety of his presence. "It is not entirely an act, William," she whispered, stepping a fraction closer. Before he could bridge the final distance between them, Beatrice slipped a small, folded piece of paper into his palm. The romantic tension shattered, replaced instantly by the cold reality of their mission. "I found it stitched into the lining of Lucy's pelisse," Beatrice whispered, her heart hammering. "Ashford is making his final move. He is attending the Regent's Jubilee Masquerade at Carlton House tomorrow night. He instructed Lucy to bring the final naval deployment schedules for the blockade of Brest. He plans to take the documents and flee to France." William's fingers closed tightly over the paper. The ice returned to his eyes, but this time it was directed solely at the enemy. "Then tomorrow night," William said, offering her his arm, "we catch a spy." Carlton House was a glittering palace of excess. 1,000 beeswax candles illuminated the gold-leafed ceilings, and the air was thick with the scent of jasmine and roasted meats. The elite of London society, hidden behind elaborate silk and velvet masks, danced to a frantic waltz. Beatrice wore a gown of deep crimson silk, a silver half-mask obscuring her upper face, while William stood at her side in severe black evening wear, his face hidden behind a striking mask of black leather. They moved through the crowd like predators. They had sent Lucy away to the country under the guise of an illness, leaving Beatrice to carry the forged documents Ashford so desperately desired. Lord Castlereagh's men, dressed in the Prince Regent's livery, were stationed at every exit. "He will look for a quiet place," William murmured, his arm firmly around Beatrice's waist as they glided through a set of French doors into the expansive, shadow-draped gardens of Carlton House. "Stay close to me." The night air was cool, the sounds of the waltz fading into a muffled thumping. They walked toward the secluded rose garden, the designated meeting spot. A figure detached itself from the shadows of a large marble statue of Apollo. It was Ashford, dressed in the crimson coat of a British lieutenant, a domino mask covering his eyes. "Lucy?" Ashford whispered sharply, stepping forward. "My cousin is indisposed, Lieutenant," Beatrice said, her voice steady and ringing clear in the quiet garden. She pulled off her silver mask, letting it fall to the gravel path. "But I brought what you asked for." Ashford froze, realizing instantly he had been outmaneuvered. His hand darted beneath his uniform coat, drawing a flintlock pistol. "You foolish woman. Hand over the dispatches, or I swear I will leave you bleeding in these roses." Before the pistol could even level at Beatrice's chest, William moved. He did not shout. He did not hesitate. With the brutal, trained efficiency of a cavalry officer, the Duke closed the distance in 2 massive strides. He struck Ashford's wrist with the silver handle of his cane, a sickening crack echoing through the garden as the pistol fell to the dirt. In the same fluid motion, William seized the spy by the throat and slammed him against the stone pedestal of the statue. Ashford choked, his boots scraping frantically against the gravel as William lifted him inches off the ground. The Duke's black mask had slipped, revealing eyes burning with a terrifying, lethal rage. "You dared to threaten my fiancée," William snarled, his voice a demonic rasp. "You tried to destroy her name. You manipulated a child, and you plotted against my country." "Please," Ashford gasped, clawing at William's iron grip. 3 men in footman livery materialized from the darkness, pistols drawn. They were Castlereagh's agents. "Take him," William ordered, tossing the spy onto the gravel like a rag doll. "Ensure he is placed in the deepest cell in the tower. If he speaks a word of Lady Beatrice or her family, I will personally see him hanged in chains." The agents gagged Ashford and dragged him silently into the shadows, leaving no trace of the violent confrontation. The music from the ballroom drifted softly over the garden wall, entirely ignorant of the treason that had just been severed at its root. William stood in the moonlight, his chest heaving as the adrenaline slowly ebbed. He turned to Beatrice. She was standing perfectly still, the crimson silk of her gown billowing slightly in the night breeze. She was unhurt, brave, and utterly magnificent. He walked toward her, discarding his cane and pulling off his black leather mask. The cold, impenetrable Duke of Havenwood was gone. In his place was a man entirely stripped of his armor. "It is done," William said softly. "The threat is eliminated. Lord Castlereagh will quietly clear your father's name of any suspicion. The rumor regarding Lord Harrington is dead and buried. You are safe, Beatrice." Beatrice looked down at the gravel. The charade was over. He had fulfilled his duty. He had saved her family. Tomorrow, they would quietly announce that the betrothal had been broken by mutual consent. She would return to her quiet life, and he would return to his solitary, icy existence. The thought felt like a physical ache in her chest. "Thank you, William," she whispered, refusing to let him see the tears prickling her eyes. "I will release you from our arrangement in the morning. You have given up enough of your peace for my sake." She turned to walk back toward the glittering lights of Carlton House, but a strong hand caught her wrist. William pulled her back, his grip firm but incredibly gentle. He drew her close, so close she could feel the frantic beating of his heart beneath his waistcoat. "Do you truly believe I could let you go?" William asked, his voice thick with an emotion he had not permitted himself to feel in 10 years. "I told the ton I kissed you to silence a rumor. I told myself I did it to protect an innocent woman from the cruelty of society." He reached up, cupping her face in his large, warm hands, his thumbs gently wiping away a single tear that had escaped down her cheek. "But the truth, Beatrice, is that I kissed you because I could not bear the thought of another man claiming you. I have spent my life guarding my heart against the world, but you walked in with your fierce courage and your unyielding loyalty, and you tore my defenses to the ground." Beatrice looked up at him, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the absolute, naked devotion burning in his dark eyes. "I do not want a broken betrothal, Beatrice," William murmured, lowering his head until his lips were a breath away from hers. "I want the reality. I want the blue stocking who hunts spies and refuses to back down. Marry me. Truly, officially, marry me." Beatrice's heart swelled with a joy so profound it felt as though she might take flight. She smiled, looping her arms around his neck. "Only if you promise to never wipe your mouth after kissing me again, Your Grace," she teased softly. A deep, genuine laugh rumbled in William's chest, a sound society had never heard from the stoic Duke. "I swear it on my life," he promised. And there, in the moonlit gardens of Carlton House, the Duke of Havenwood kissed her again. But this time, it was not to silence a vicious lie, nor to put on a show for a cruel society. He kissed her to seal a truth that would outlast the gossips, the spies, and the ages. A truth forged in the fires of scandal, resulting in the greatest love story the Ton would ever know. The Duke of Havenwood silenced a rumor with a kiss, but in doing so, he found a love that defied society's darkest treachery. What did you think of Beatrice and William's dangerous charade to catch a spy? If this thrilling tale of Regency scandal, espionage, and romance kept you on the edge of your seat, be sure to hit that like button. Share this story with your fellow historical romance lovers, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories.